The Suicide Squad. So this is the latest reboot slash remake slash semi-sequel to 2016's Suicide Squad, originally directed by David Ayer. That movie had really mixed reviews. It's really kind of bad. I did rewatch it before seeing this just for comparison. It's a snooze fest. It's hard to get through. There are some good performances in that one. Will Smith is good. Margot Robbie is good. But they went back to the drawing board with this. And, they really kind of ignore the first movie. Like, we have some familiar characters, but they don't reference anything in the first movie. That there's no plot points or anything moving forward. It's just kind of like, let's just start this thing over. So anyways, our story is the Suicide Squad. For those who aren't familiar, are a group of criminals, villains who get contracted to do black ops work and get time off their lengthy prison sentences. However, if they disobey or try to escape, a little device implanted in their head will explode at the request of Amanda Waller, played brilliantly by Viola Davis, who was in the first one as well. In this one, we start at this country called Corto Maltese, a fictitious South American country, which the Suicide Squad has to assault in order to take on this secret scientific project that must be destroyed so it's not unleashed on the world. As soon as they hit the ground, a lot of things go wrong, some things go right, and they have to slowly make their way through the island to the facility. A lot of action, a lot of laughs. And that's kind of our basic setup. I won't get too much more into it. We have, again, returning favorites: Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn, Joel Kinnaman as Rick Flag, Jai Courtney as Captain Boomerang, and newcomers Idris Elba as Bloodsport and John Cena as Peacemaker. And part of what they did is they don't have a lot of big names in this. In fact, they kind of purposely went to the bottom of the barrel of characters and took on the challenge of making them interesting. So we have people like Polka Dot Man, like Ratcatcher, like I said, Peacemaker, these kind of really weird off the beaten path DC characters. And they took on the challenge of making them fun and interesting. So that's our setup. Zach, what do you think?
So first of all, the Suicide Squad is much better than the original Suicide Squad, for sure. I've tried to watch the old Suicide Squad a couple times now, David Avery's original film. It is bad. It's bad. I can't. I've tried. I've fallen asleep twice trying to watch that film in the evening. Meanwhile, James Gunn's The Suicide Squad is much, much tighter of a film. It's got some middling audience reception. It's got like a B+. But critics mostly agree this is a strong entry for DC and a very, very good step towards something better for them. I think James Gunn is a big part of that. I think his cast is a really big part of that. And I think ultimately, like, Warner Brothers just letting off the reins a little bit and saying, okay, you know what? Here's a bunch of characters you can just throw in a blender. We don't care, and letting the creatives kind of do what they want to do, I think ultimately produces a much better film. Remember Avery's Suicide Squad in 2016, I think?
Yeah.
Reportedly had a lot of studio intervention, and this one reportedly had much less, and I think it is markedly better for it. I'm excited to talk about it. There's a lot of good stuff going on in the Suicide Squad.
Yeah, the number one thing is that it's just a lot of fun. It's not a serious kind of, it's not like The Dark Knight, and it's not dark and grim like a lot of DC's early DCEU films are. We're having fun from the beginning with our characters. There's lots of action. A lot of people do not survive the film. I'm not gonna who that is you'll have to see.
Yeah,
but you really don't know. Anyone could go at any time, and that's a lot of fun as well. But it's really funny. There's a lot of really good jokes. It's also it's rated R, which part of the reason is it has very, very strong violence, and that kind of, it's different for DC, and it really aids in the humor because you have this like over the top, really graphic, really gory moments in amongst these like fun comic book characters.
Yeah, I this movie in a lot of ways reminded me of something smaller budget and a little bit more indie, like an Edgar Wright film, almost, or like a Sam Raimi picture. And I also often thought of the movie, I guess the property, I should say, Watchmen. Which, if you haven't seen Watchmen, it's DC property, or is it Vertigo? Yeah,
decent.
it's about a bunch of superheroes who have to kind of contend with some larger beings at work. Most of them are not mainstream. You're not going to see Batman or Superman and Watchmen. You're going to see smaller, offbeat, heroes who are kind of doing their own thing, and that's exactly what's going on here. There's a couple of big ones. Harley Quinn, Bloodsport, I suppose, is a big one. Otherwise, like pretty small heroes. And I love that this movie doesn't shy away from like just outright murdering them, like for a laugh.
Yeah.
And it's great because you don't get that in comic book movies right now. You get the exact opposite of that. Like every hero has value. I mean, in Marvel movies and shows, nobody dies. Nobody's ever
back.
really gone. Everyone's
ever
coming
really
back.
gone.
Yeah, and in James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, like people die horribly, and it's playing for a laugh, and like it's funny because it's fresh and it's new and it's different and it's brutal and grisly. This is an R-rated film for violence and gore for sure, and I love that. I love that about it. I love that it feels different. Yeah.
So I mean, where to start?
Well, I mean, I think we've already kind of covered that this is a follow-up from the original. Having not really seen the original, something I was really impressed with was just the opening of this film. It opens with a short, probably 10-minute sequence that very quickly outlines why they call it the Suicide Squad, right? And we open with a character who is being plucked from this kind of prison that they're all being kept at, all these bad guys, and they get a quick explanation. If you survive the mission, you get 10 years off your sentence. If you don't, well, that's the way it goes, kid. And they all sign up to go out and do it, and then they land on this beach at night, and then like awful things start to happen to them.
All hell breaks loose. Yeah.
Yes, all hell breaks loose, and you get a very practical explanation to why it's called the Suicide Squad, because the odds are you're not coming back. Like if you sign up for this mission, the odds are you're not going to survive. And I love that because it makes it feel very genuine. The first film, it felt like they were using Suicide Squad as a moniker to generate some buzz for marketing. Here it's like, no, you will die and it'll be terrible. Like, and nobody would want that fate for themselves. Welcome to the Suicide Squad, kid.
I think in the first one, only one person dies in the Suicide Squad, and it's like a Z-list character. They don't even get like a backstory moment. That's the other thing, that this movie is much more efficient. Like it explains the whole premise in about the first 5 minutes. Do this mission, get time off your sentence. If you disobey, your head gets blown up, and that's it. In the first one, where there was like an hour of like slowly explaining every character's backstory, it took like an hour for them to become the Suicide Squad, and then they had to like take on something. It was so laborious. And here, this movie's moving really quick. We do get some backstory and some flashback stuff, but it happens after kind of we've had some action and we're up and going.
Yeah, you also spend very little time at this facility where they're all being held captive. I mean, mere moments of the film take place there. Otherwise, it is exclusively on location at this site at the Cordo Maldives that you said?
Yeah.
Where they are dealing with this, suicide mission, I should say. And that's a lot of fun. Like that stuff feels really fresh. You've got your characters mostly on location, and even though I'm sure a lot of it was in sets, it felt like they were away from a set. It felt like they were out doing their own thing. It didn't always feel like they were wandering through the woods per se, but like it definitely felt like our characters are on a mission. They don't have a whole lot of support behind them. They kind of have to figure it out for themselves. And they're like this goofy cavalcade of people with like the oddest powers and positions. Like one, Polka Dot Man's easy to poke fun at, but like at one point he starts to look like disfigured, and there's never really a great explanation for that. But it's like a laugh. Like, and then you've got another character, Mon Gal. She's a laugh because she's weird, and you never really find out what her deal is. And like, I like that this movie doesn't overstress that stuff. Like it explicitly is designed as like, hey, this is going to be like a superhero bad guy meat grinder. And we're just going to throw a bunch in. Best superhero bad guy wins. Let's see what happens. And then they come out the other end and it's like, man, what an experience. You wouldn't think it would work on paper, but it totally does.
Yeah, exactly. It's so much fun. And, they took on the challenge, like something like Polka Dot Man, which is just like such a ridiculous character. And they purposely took him on and said, okay, we're going to make this character fun and interesting and kind of give him some heart here, and it totally works. And they do that with the rest of this cast of misfits as well. And somehow you end up just caring more about these characters and a lot of the big names in the more mainstream films.
Yeah, James Gunn said that when he kind of sat down and looked at the Suicide Squad and what he wanted to do, he wanted to pull from this kind of original vision of the Suicide Squad in the comics, like, and that there's this innate tragic element to supervillains who aren't even good at being bad. Like, they're not even good bad guys, right? Like, they're not even like the Joker who's out like terrorizing Gotham. They're the bad guys. They're the really bad ones. So like, you develop this kind of funny sympathy for a few of them over the course of the film, just because like they're total rejects. Like, they're not even good at being bad guys. And like, you kind of start to feel sorry for a few of them, which is great. Like that sympathy helps you develop better relationships with people like Harley Quinn. It also helps you develop relationships like people like John Cena's The Peacemaker, who will be going on to have their own HBO show, a spinoff from this property, which is crazy. I like that this movie gives you the opportunity to get inside the head of somebody with superpowers in a totally different, fresh way. Because yeah, like there's somebody you in a weird way have sympathy for. Like, you don't feel bad for them, but like you can sympathize, I guess, with like their struggles.
Yeah, I was gonna say they work so well as a cast, as a team. Not actually work well together, but there's so much just good dialogue between back and forth. It's like the opposite of Justice League, because Justice League is like, we have to band together and save the planet, and these everyone kind of hates each other. Like Peacemaker and Idris Elba are like having a pissing contest the whole movie. They both like get on each other's nerves. Idris Elba's just like, man, we're just gonna die out here. No one's like, this is gonna go so wrong. Like, his attitude towards this whole thing is really great, and just like the camaraderie, and it works really well and makes for a lot of good gags.
Yeah, Cena's Peacemaker is a delight. I mean, he's a ton of fun walking around set because he's this guy with this just like total bluster about everything he does. Like, he's somehow the best at doing it, when it's like, not only are you in prison, but again, you're not any kind of A-list bad guy. Like, you're very low on that. In fact, it's not even clear why he's a bad guy. You'd think a guy named Peacemaker would be a hero, right? But that part never really, well, you have to watch it and see if it comes to fruition,
I mean, the main reason is like his name is Peacemaker because he cherishes peace over everything, but that means he kills a lot of people so that there is peace.
Right?
It's kind of like if you want peace, prepare for war, kind of.
For sure. Idris Elba's Bloodsport is in prison for shooting a kryptonite bullet at Superman. You never see that sequence. They just say it in a throwaway line, and then they move right along, and that's okay because it's not about Superman. Like, and it's not about Bloodsport shooting Superman, right? It's about this like goofy kind of misadventure all of our miscreants are going to go on. Harley Quinn. Regarding the timeline, I should say, with Birds of Prey, this is sometime after Birds of Prey. It's not really specific. I forget how that's identified. I feel like I read it in trivia somewhere, but that's where this is. So she's kind of doing her own thing. She's a little bit more grown up. She's got an outfit that's based off the Batman Arkham City game. A little bit more mature, which is nice. We've got King Shark, voiced inconspicuously by Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah,
who would have seen that? Probably the biggest name on the cast list. Yeah, is not even at the top of the credits. Like, they don't advertise him or anything. Ratcatcher 2 is a lot of fun. That is, who plays her?
That's a great gag. So Ratcatcher 1 is not here, but we have I think it's the daughter Ratcatcher 2, and
that's right.
They go in a whole explanation about how and why that is. But it's those little jokes like that. I wanted to talk a little bit more about Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. It's been really interesting to see the evolution of this character, because when she came out in Suicide Squad, she was a hit just because Harley Quinn's Harley Quinn. Margot Robbie's a fabulous actor, and they also just like put her kind of in the most ridiculous costume in that first movie. Like, she's basically in like stripper wear,
the daddy's little princess outfit. Yeah.
And I mean, she basically, everyone else is in costume. She looks like she's in cosplay. Like, it's like she's wearing these like super short shorts, like really revealing, and it's like, it caused a big deal by like, look at how like men are dressing up this character. It changed a lot when she did Birds of Prey, and when she had a lot of say over how the character looked and dressed, and that's carried over into this, because again we've moved past her relationship with the Joker, and like she's got a cool, again, she's got this big red dress that she kind of wears and fights in this whole time. It's not like this overly sexualized thing. So it's been an interesting thing to see that character progress.
Yeah, seeing her kind of grow into her own is great. Peter Capaldi as the Thinker is solid. I know that man's an actor, but I'll never understand the confidence he has to show up on screen with like the goofy headgear he's got in this movie
Yeah.
and still like be some kind of menacing or interesting. Like he's definitely like snively and weaselly in this film, but he's not brash about it. And Viola Davis is tremendous as Amanda Waller. She's kind of this antagonist driving our characters forward with her hand on the kill switch throughout the whole film, and she's a ton of fun. Everybody's good in this movie, like solid performances all around. I think the comedy plays really well. I mean, it's just about a gag a minute. And obviously when you're looking at a gag a minute film like Airplane, right, they're not all going to be hits, but a lot of them are funny. Like I laughed out loud more than a couple times when I was watching this film. And like, that's worth saying something. And the action is very solid.
Yeah, well, I was going to say before we move on to action that I started rewatching this yesterday, and I got about through the first hour, and I still laughed at some of the same jokes that I like knew were coming and knew that because it's still like really funny and really good writing. But moving on, action.
Yes, the action for this film is brutal and gory and bloody and a lot of fun. It's nice to see superhero characters just kind of unloading, even if these are the B list, right? Even if these aren't the good ones. It's a little dull when you see Superman just punch some heroes, some bad guys out, and it's like, well, here they are, officer. Sometimes you want to see them go off a little bit, right? And like that's exactly what's happening in this movie. All these characters are throwing 110% at their problems physically. If they need to shoot somebody, they're not just going to shoot them. They're going to figure out a way to blow their head off. Like they're going to always figure out a way to have some kind of horribly gruesome, gory experience that's usually played for a laugh. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but I promise it kind of works in this crazy mind meld of a film. I love how colorful it is, and I guess that'll be more towards cinematography. Regarding action, what do you think, Andy?
Yeah, the action is a lot of fun. Again, it's over the top violence, and you got a little bit of everything. You got shootouts, you got hand to hand combat, you got people using their powers, and a mix all there between. Harley Quinn has a really great sequence. I won't say what kind of sequence it is, but she's got a really great action sequence about halfway through the film, which is really awesome, and it's cool to see her do her own thing. That might become a staple because we see that in the Birds of Prey movie as well.
What's that?
The Harley Quinn like action.
Yeah, she has got her own sequence. Yeah, which honestly, the one in Birds of Prey is better. This one is a funny way of kind of the cinematography and the action is kind of interesting. I felt like Birds of Prey had a really clean series of like action direction and stunts performed, at least in the initial Harley Quinn sets. This one's a little bit faster in the cinematography. James Gunn really likes to whip that camera around and gets a little get a little nuts with it, which is a lot of fun, but a little jarring, I think. But for the larger action scenes, I really appreciated the look of them. The cinematography in this film is really solid. Gunn has he usually plays it pretty safe with his camera work, but on occasion he'll do something really cool, pull a trick or do something different or kind of show something in a way that's unique. And that stuff stands out. Like I said, in parts of this, it feels like an Edgar Wright film. It feels really bold. It reminded me, the mix of gore and comedy reminded me of like Hot Fuzz. The way Hot Fuzz will play 10 laughs and then have something horrendous happen to a character and then go right back to the laughs. And this movie does that same thing. There's a great sequence in the end of this film. It's kind of the climax when our characters are getting out of this car and they're kind of walk into this big showdown. And it's raining and it is like supremely sunny while it is raining, and it's so sunny it's just like solid white in the background. You can't see anything but like the characters and the car and the rain, and then just like this white field of nothing behind them. And it makes no sense. It makes no sense in the real world for anything to look like that, but it looks so rad. Like as they're walking through it, and King Shark like rips a dude in half in it, and it's the coolest looking shot. There's all kinds of cool things, and the big bad in this film, I think, is notable because it's much less forgettable than I feel like 90% of other comic book bad guys are, right? Typically, it's just some CGI fest, some nobody alien from another planet who's here to take over the world. This one, it's just a little different, and it's really smart.
Yeah, that's part of what went really bad in the first one. Is again, the first hour is spent on setup of the Suicide Squad, and then all of a sudden there's some attack, and one of the members, Enchantress, she turns bad and like releases her brother, and her brother becomes the big bad, and he's just kind of like this god thing, and it's completely forgettable. I have no idea what that thing's name is or was. I only remember because I just watched it like last week. We have a really unique, very different kind of antagonist. We have kind of several antagonists. Amanda Waller is an antagonist a little bit herself. So it's very memorable kind of final showdown.
Yeah. And ultimately, like a solid package. I did like the music in this film. I think it's worth mentioning. It's a big indie soundtrack. It opens with a Johnny Cash track, and that's about the most mainstream one I think is in there. Otherwise, it's all stuff I've never heard. Very, very James Gunn, right? Like somebody's listening to on his iPod when he's walking around set. And that's great, because it makes it feel unique, gives it a bit of an identity, and has way less needle drops than the original film did, which I know hurt it. So, yeah. And any thoughts on the soundtrack?
I like the soundtrack. There's a couple of good songs. That was another big problem in the first one, is that it was essentially trying to rip off Guardians of the Galaxy, which had a great soundtrack. So they tried to throw every big pop song in from the last like 10, 15 years in, and it didn't work, and you knew exactly what they were trying to do. The songs didn't really fit, and there were so many. It was like every time there was a new scene, there was a new hit song that we'd already heard, and it was pretty bad. And so this definitely shies away from that. We do get a couple of good numbers, but they fit the action and what's happening on film so much better.
It's true. And overall, it's a solid package. I think James Gunn managed to put something together here that's really unique. It seems like a nice shift from what he was doing with Guardians, a much more like PG-13 kind of film. This one, he's got way more clout to just throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks, and it works. I think it's creative. I think it's new. I think honestly, between this and Shazam, maybe a little Birds of Prey, maybe a little Wonder Woman, I think DC is starting to eke out maybe a bit of a direction here that's not Zack Snyder. Like they might be on their way to finding a tone and a feeling for a world of superheroes that is different from what Marvel is doing, but feels fresh and new and easy to embrace. Zack Snyder's DC is a world of gods and men. This is a world of
men and idiots.
Yeah, exactly. Men and morons. And like, I think when the world is jaded from too many comic book movies, like maybe that's exactly what we need. So that's the Suicide Squad. Andy, any other thoughts for final recommendations?
I'm ready.
Andy, would you recommend the Suicide Squad?
Absolutely. It's a lot of fun. You don't have to have seen the first one. That's another big kind of criticism of Marvel, is like you kind of have to have seen all 18, 20 films to know what's going on. You can jump into the Suicide Squad, having seen any of the DC stuff. You're probably better for it, and still have a lot of fun. It's available again in theaters and on HBO, so it's a lot of fun. I highly recommend. Yeah,
same here. Highly recommend. It is really solid. It is rated R, so big content warning. You're going to be getting into some, you're going to be seeing some gruesome stuff. But it's never too serious. It never takes itself too seriously. It never expects you to really look inside yourself and have an introspective, consumerist experience about what it means to be a superhero and a god among men. Nope, never does that. It's just this goofy, like 110-minute romp with the Suicide Squad. I recommend it. I think it's funny. I think it's fresh. I think it's different. I enjoyed it. I think we will see James Gunn's The Suicide Squad in the first few initial offerings. When you scroll down HBO Max and look at DC movies, this one will be one of the first ones on there because it's popular and I think it's positive and I think it's good. So that's the Suicide Squad. And with that.